I have received a letter from the Honourable Annette King seeking to debate under Standing Order 389 the failure of the negotiations between government agencies and Relationships Aotearoa. This is a particular case of recent occurrence involving ministerial responsibility. The failure of the negotiations with government agencies was reported by Relationships Aotearoa yesterday. The negotiations concern the level of future government funding for the service. The House is this week debating the 2015-16 budget, and the departmental estimates are currently before select committees for examination. The budget debate will provide the opportunity to discuss the matter today, and the estimates examinations the opportunity to consider it in detail and to debate it further when select committee reports on the estimates are considered in the committee of the whole House. On this basis, the matter raised does not meet the test for me to set aside the business of the House today. The application is therefore declined. I have also received a letter from Dr. David Clark seeking to debate under Standing Order 389 the announcement today that the Sky City Convention Centre design will be downsized. This is a particular case of recent occurrence involving ministerial responsibility. The revised design was announced today by the Minister for Economic Development, and the Government is party to the agreement to build the Convention Centre. However, the business of the House should not be set aside just because a ministerial announcement has been made, even though it may be important. There must be such an element of urgency that the matter must take precedence over other business. In this instance, I am not persuaded there is an element of urgency that warrants the setting aside of the business of the House. The application is therefore declined. I have further received a letter from Ron Mark seeking to debate under Standing Order 389 the advance of ISIS to within an hour's range of the Taji base and the Iraqis' lack of will to fight. The matters outlined in Mr. Mark's letter does not constitute a particular case of recent occurrence and does not involve a ministerial responsibility. The advance of ISIS and the state of the Iraqi army are not matters for which there is ministerial responsibility. The government decision to deploy troops to Iraq was announced in February of this year and was debated in the House at that time. Because the application does not meet any of the criteria for an urgent debate set out in Standing Order 389, it is declined. I call on Government Order of the Day Number 1.
2015-16 Estimates Bill, adjourned debate on second reading and the amendment proposed thereto.
Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr. Speaker, I'm very happy to rise and take a call on the budget, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to commence by congratulating Bill English on his 7th budget for this government, Mr. Speaker, and a fine budget it is. But there is a problem, Mr. Speaker, because last year it was pointed out that Mr. English had come up with 6 budgets, which was exactly the same number as he had children, Mr. Speaker. So I need to check, Bill, has there been further children in the intervening 12 months? No, there hasn't, Mr. Speaker. So Bill has had to move on to nephews and nieces in 2015. And, Mr. Speaker, the good news is that Bill has roughly, at last count, 60 nephews and nieces. So that is many budgets to come, Mr. Speaker, from the current Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, Bill, of course, is not flashy. He's not a flashy finance minister. He's solid, he's dependable, as one of the commentators pointed out. He's not flash in any way, and his budget last week was not flash. It was solid, it was dependable, it was conservative, all except for his tie, Mr. Speaker. A lot of work went into the budget, and it's fair to say, Mr. Speaker, a lot of work went into Bill's tie this year, and the caucus would like to congratulate Mary English on choosing Bill's tie for the first time in Budget 2015, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this budget is a budget from a government that is working hard and for a plan that's working, Mr. Speaker. It's a budget that provides for continued falling unemployment, Mr. Speaker. It's a budget that provides for wages continuing to grow faster than inflation, for reducing hardship. It's a budget that delivers solid economic growth. It constrains spending, Mr. Speaker, It controls inflation, Mr Speaker. It balances the books, Mr Speaker. It keeps debt under control, Mr Speaker. It provides significant ACC reductions, Mr Speaker. It delivers better public services, $1.7 billion for health and nearly $700 million for schools and early childhood services. Mr Speaker, it's a budget that invests in a growing economy. It invests in business R&D. It invests in tertiary education. It invests in areas like agriculture, science, pharmacy, Maori and Pacifica trades training. Mr Speaker, it's a budget that invests in New Zealand's assets. It invests in ultra-fast broadband. It invests in the rail system, in rural broadband, in the Canterbury rebuild, in regional science institutes. Mr Speaker, it's a budget that encourages the building of more houses in Auckland, Mr Speaker. It's a budget that increases investment in social housing. It's a budget that strengthens property income taxes, amongst many other things, Mr Speaker. It is an excellent budget for New Zealand, and I congratulate Bill English on delivering a fine budget last week, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, I'd also like to congratulate the Leader of the Opposition. Yeah, I think we should, Mr Speaker, for a superb budget reply speech. A superb budget reply speech. Hear me out. That speech hit all the right buttons, Mr Speaker. It hit all the right buttons. We got the 7 veils, Mr Speaker. We got the roosters on heat. That was a goodie. That got them thinking. Mr Speaker, not often you see roosters on heat, to be fair. It had Gene Simmons. That was an absolute stroke of genius. The old Gene Simmons. And of course, Mr Speaker, it had gender reassignment as well. Mr Speaker, you can just imagine them sitting in the war room of the Labor Party with their copy of the budget, which they'd been given at 1 p.m. last Thursday afternoon, and between 1 and 2 last Thursday, they realised that Bill English had stolen all of their attack. He'd stolen all their lines. And their only approach was, oh, I don't know, how about a series of massive distractions, Mr Speaker? A series of massive distractions. At first, they thought of doing a little more poetry, like Andrew Little had said yesterday. Let's face it, Andrew Little's poetry was brilliant. And Chris Hipkins popped up and said, why don't you do that Enroll for the Dole poem that Tim Barnett taught you, Mr Speaker. But no, Andrew Little, Mr Speaker, pulled out Gene Simmons. Gene Simmons, and that is, Mr Speaker, leadership. And then Grant Robertson pipes up, just like he is now. Grant Robertson pipes up and says, I know what, leader, let's give that gender reassignment thing a go again. It will go down well with the party. And he's serious. And you do take Grant's advice, because every other leader has. And let's face it, where would the Labor Party be without Grant Robertson's advice? Where would Labor Party be without Grant Robertson's advice? Well, 20 points higher in the poll, maybe, for a start. But let's face it, you take Grant's advice, you run with gender reassignment, but you draw the line at 2 dead fish, Mr Speaker. You draw the line at 2 dead fish. You snap out of that one. You say to yourself, well, he did. He listened to the gender reassignment story. And then what do you do on Friday, Mr Speaker? Well, there you are, Friday morning. You haven't got any of the team behind you. You're up the front. You're on your own. You're king of your domain. You're out there, angry but controlled, to be fair. Friday morning speech in Wellington, angry but controlled. I know. What am I going to go on about? How will I distract them today? I know. Super's too expensive. Super is too expensive. It's way too expensive. And what about all these people that are working past 65, supplementing their super? Where do these people get off? Outrageous. Look at people like Winston Peters, acting like the leader of the opposition when he's on a pension. He should be at home. He shouldn't be trying to take my job, Mr Speaker. So let's get into that. Let's get into that. It's a platform right there. It's time to man up and deal with people who sit in Parliament and correct the super, Mr Speaker. And I, Andrew Little, are going to deal with that. What's that, Sue? Oh, I'm not going to deal with it. OK, fair enough. You're right, Sue, I'm not. So no manning up this time. Sue Moroney's in charge, and we'll put out a press release because I didn't mean it. I didn't mean anything about means testing super, Mr Speaker. We could lift the age, though. We could lift the age, because people work for ages these days. They could lift the age. That'd work. We could lift the age Oh, we've said that already. No, I didn't say that. I didn't say that. That bit about mean testing your income, that wasn't me. That wasn't Andrew Little. That was the media, Mr. Speaker. The media made stuff up. The media made stuff up. You've got the footage. Oh, you've got the footage. Well, no, I didn't say it that way, Mr. Speaker. Don't go putting words into my mouth, Paddy. That's Andrew Little's favourite line. Don't go putting words into my mouth, Paddy. Even if I've said them already, I didn't say them now, and I hope you've got that, and kindly stop questioning me on that subject. Mr. Speaker, that's Andrew Little's approach to the budget, and I think he should be congratulated. But not to be outdone, in the policy on the hoof division, we have the newly minted fiscal conservative, one Grant Robertson, Mr. Speaker. The newly minted fiscal conservative. The man who spent the entire first 6 years in Parliament as the big spender is suddenly reconstructed as Labor's new fiscal conservative. The man who couldn't see a spending program that didn't need keeping, growing or expanding has suddenly become balance the budget Grant, Mr. Speaker. He's become balance the budget. He's the one that says that there should be lots of savings, there should be balancing of the budget. ACC should be cut back despite the fact that Labor extended all the ACC, Mr. Speaker. It should be cut back, and that the Grant's new version of life is that we should be fiscally conservative, Mr. Speaker, until the budget's delivered. And then suddenly the budget is delivered, and actually, no, you shouldn't be taking away the KiwiSaver kickstart, and on the hoof, I will declare, yep, I will reinstate it. That's the power of being the opposition newly minted Conservative spokesperson on finance. Yep, I'll reinstate. Forget the fact that I put a press release out not half an hour ago which said I wouldn't necessarily put it back and didn't actually mention I'd put it back. It was about half an hour before he puts out a press release, and then he goes out and he goes, yep, I'd put it back, yep. Feel the power, Mr. Speaker. This is Grant Robertson, who's not only the finance spokesperson, but he's contemplating now his 5th attempt. It is the 5th or 6th attempt at the leadership of the Labor Party following that brilliant speech he wrote for Andrew Little last week, Mr. Speaker. But that's all right. On Saturday it was back to empty rhetoric of soulless opposition politics. Calling for more innovation, except we're delivering it. Calling for more skills, except we're delivering it. Calling for a better budget, except we're delivering it. Mr. Speaker, this government has declared a budget with a relentless focus on a strong economy and jobs, a budget that is continuing to invest to support families in need, a budget that is responsibly managing spending and revenue, a budget that is increasing our resilience to global risk. Mr. Speaker, this is a budget that delivers a plan that's working, and the opposition is just delivering a mess. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.